All right. It's a little later than 1 o'clock. We had some technical issues to deal with. All my fault. Mea culpa. And the show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. And today our guests are Saida Gordon of LMSW and Jennifer Mitchell-Mayer, LSCW, of the Division of Student Affairs Wellness Center. And we're going to be talking about, the work they're doing with students. Welcome. Say hi. Jennifer, Saida. Jennifer, you're muted, and Saida, I don't hear you. Say hi.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us, Hugo. It's really an honor
Jennifer.
To be here.
And Saida?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us.
And we talked a little bit about the format before the show. And so I'd like maybe give the two of you an opportunity to talk about, your backgrounds, where you're from, your studies before coming to LaGuardia. So who would like to go first?
Jen, you want me to jump in? Because I can. I'm ready. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Saida Gordon. So I started at the Wellness Center at the beginning of this year, so January. So I'm fairly new to the center. Most of my work, so I'm a licensed social worker. Most of my work has really been around young adult services, outpatient mental health services, and program development. I work at LaGuardia part-time, offering counseling services to the wonderful students here, but full-time, I work on a grant-funded project over at Hunter College, where I'm helping to kind of help the people in East Harlem connect to different services. And so I supervise staff over there. And so I'm originally from the Bronx, born and raised, and I still reside. And so Queens is different. I'll say that much. But it's definitely a joy to be here. Thank you so much. Jen?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Similar to Saida, I also joined LaGuardia at the Wellness Center in January, and it's been incredible to join just the amazing team doing this work. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, been in the field for just over 20 years. I did my bachelor's in social work at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. I grew up around that area. And from there I got my master's in social work from Columbia. And it's just, this is really my life's work, and just so passionate to be able to do this work. I've worked a lot with different populations of young people over the year. Over the years, I've worked in foster care, preventive services, justice-involved youth, homeless populations. I've worked sort of on the clinical side and on the policy side as well. So it's been really great to kind of see different perspectives, kind of over the years. Some of my early work, I worked with families who had been impacted by September 11th. And so I think a lot of kind of what I bring to the work is just kind of really understanding kind of those complex traumas that everyone really carries, right? And sort of how we navigate that in this work.
It's funny because I was saying to Jennifer before the show that I can remember the LCSW because my wife is also an LCSW. And interestingly enough, when she graduated, she went to Stanford, but she came back to New York because she'd lived here before, and started right after 9/11, working with folks, reaching out to folks who were suffering from trauma from that. By the way, I want to apologize for the light show that everybody's getting on my end. It is this wonderful energy-saving device that's supposed to turn off the lights when I'm not here. But for some reason, it's completely whacked, and so it turns off when I am here. And I have these lights behind me, so when I'm working on the machines, I know what I'm doing. But they are creating this kind of halo effect. I feel like Bob Dylan comes alive or whatever, whatever those album covers are. Saida, tell us your degree. You're an L. Wait a minute. Let me pull. If I can pull up my. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the thing. You're an LMSW. So, what's the difference between the two degrees?
So, it's a big difference. And so just a little background on me. I got my undergraduate degree in Health and Human Services and Sociology from the University of Buffalo. And then I worked for a little bit, and then I ended up getting my master's in social work at Hunter College, where I work full time. So it was a full circle moment for me. So you typically, when you graduate from social work school and you take your licensure exam, so once you graduate, you already get your MSW. The additional step is to take a licensing exam, which by the grace of and the skin of your hairs, you pass, because everybody freaks out when they take this test. Then you become an LMSW, so you become a licensed master social worker. What Jen is an LCSW, which you have to obtain a certain level of clinical hours at an outpatient, inpatient clinic, however, offering therapeutic services. So you can accumulate, I think it's about 2,000 or 3,000 hours, and you have to do it post your master's for about 3 years, and then you take another test, and then you qualify to be an LCSW. So what Jen's credential is, that's what I'm working towards right now. And so that's really the difference between the LMSW and the LCSW.
And you said you were part-time. Jennifer, are you also part-time at the center, or are you full-time?
Yes, I'm part-time.
So when you guys say
well.
part-time, what are we talking, 20 hours each?
About 16, 17 hours a week.
Okay. And by the way, we invited all kinds of folks from the Wellness Center, and Jennifer and Saida were the ones that, between illnesses and travel and all kinds of other things. So thanks for being here. You want to tell us a little bit about so what you do there as far as, at the center itself? Are you directly working one-on-one with students, or are you involved in a kind of myriad of things?
Yeah, I can start with this one. I guess what I would first say is just the team, and I think we represent just kind of a small portion of the team. Really incredible staff that's working at the Wellness Center. I think what I'm really struck with is, there's such a rich amount of backgrounds and experiences and expertise sort of across the team. I think that's one of the things I really actually love about working with my colleagues at the Wellness Center, that there's really such a diverse group of people kind of, coming together doing this work. So that's been really, really incredible just to see that. Saida and myself and a few others, we actually were able to come on through the CARES grant, which was in response to the COVID pandemic. So it was some special funding that allowed some of us newer staff to kind of come aboard, which has been fantastic. And to answer your question before, Hugo, I think, that's the scale and type of work. It's been really, really diverse, the types of work that we've been able to do. So I do some individual work. So I have a caseload of students that I meet with individually and give counseling. So we provide sort of short-term counseling at the Wellness Center. And we also provide crisis intervention, case management. So we connect students. So when they're working with us, if there's other types of services they need, either when they're working with us or after our work together, we do a lot of work with sort of connecting them to other types of services. We've been able to do some groups and workshops. That's kind of been really exciting to connect with students in that way. So, for example, this last year, I facilitated a group around grief and loss for students who had been experiencing different types of grief, particularly during the pandemic. We also get to do some outreach sort of across the LaGuardia staff, which has been really exciting too, because I think, for me, I'm always really excited, not just what we're seeing with the students, but sort of what are the professors seeing? What are our other colleagues kind of across the campus kind of seeing? So there's been some times where we've had an opportunity to kind of present workshops or different things, to staff or faculty, but which is so, again, informative for us as well to kind of get their perspective around things that are going on as we're doing different, sort of mental health trainings. And I also I do a group supervision. So I supervise and connect with some of the other counselors, which is great for all of us and really actually great for me as well, right? Just for all of us just to be able to kind of like come together and sort of just share and really talk about the work. So it's been a really richly diverse experience to kind of be able to do this work in a lot of different ways.
Ida, is there anything you would add to that?
No, I think Jen kind of covered it all. I think that a lot of our work, I do more of the individual one-to-one counseling. And so with the students here. And so I think that, the other piece of that is that, the way in which we approach the work, the therapeutic work is very holistic, right? And that we're trying to definitely understand that, the pandemic impacted, everyone on many different levels. And, as students are trying to come back into, some sort of new normal, which is like a term that's been coined throughout this whole thing, it's really giving students the opportunity to kind of process and really come to their own understanding of what the new normal means. So, that's a huge part of our work as well.
Well, what do you think is, you're seeing these students coming in, you're working with them one-on-one. What's the number one issue that is, if there is one, that you see in our students that, popping up with individual cases? Is there one?
I don't think that there's one particular one. I definitely think there's like common themes that we're seeing. We're definitely seeing students who are definitely struggling with anxiety. The pandemic isn't over. I think that, part of creating the new normal is knowing that there is still a lot of research and tests that are being done to really understand, COVID, like medically, but also understand its long-term impact by the people who have been directly and indirectly impacted. And so when we see students, a lot of our students are trying to manage their own anxiety around being around friends, family, being back in the classroom. What is it going to be like? What do precautionary methods look like? And especially with like the big push for, everyone to get vaccinated, that's a whole nother layer of things that we're dealing with, students trying to manage, what they feel is appropriate for them and really advocating for themselves. I think another thing that we commonly see is, students, struggling academically, right? When you're in person in the classroom, it's a much different learning experience from logging on to a computer, right? And it really talks more about accessibility. I think that with the pandemic, before the pandemic, you didn't have to worry about too much about accessibility because you could easily walk into your classroom and get what you need, right? And if you didn't have a computer at home, you had technology at school. When everything shut down, it really forced students to think about access. Some students don't have it like that. And so they were relying on the services of the school to kind of meet their needs, so kind of managing their anxiety around being able to still perform at optimal level, right? And balancing those things out. And then I think the other piece that we commonly see among students is just, them coming to understanding with their own home dynamics, right? Like, there's a great separation when you go to school or work. You kind of leave everything where it's at. I leave work at work, I leave school at school, and then I come home, and then I get to have some break or deal with that. Now with students having to deal with, because, LaGuardia has a huge population of, working students, and so you think about the fact that, all right, now I'm working from home, I'm doing school from home, and then I'm also home, right? In addition to if you have relationships, you're married, or you have kids, that's a lot. And you may not always have the time to decompress or process or break away. So, students are also coming to talk about, like, how do I manage this? Because some people, like Jen and I myself, we're still working from home, right? And so it's how do you balance those things out? So I think those are like the big ones that keep coming up for me. Jen, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Saida, I love the way that you described that, right? Just all of those like complexities, right? That are coming up for students, and I really agree with all of that. That I think the pandemic, and I actually think we're going to be seeing the impact of this for years and years to come. There is no question that the COVID pandemic has exacerbated mental health concerns really across the board. And I think to look at this really broadly, not only there's no question like our student population and their families are really impacted, but I think one thing that really has been coming to mind for me recently is kind of really systemically when we look at the mental health concerns that are now coming up, right, for all those reasons, that Saida described. They're impacting everyone, across all of New York City and across the whole country. And so I think what we're really seeing is again, such an escalated need for mental health support. And I would say, anecdotally, one of the things, Hugo, that we do for our students, as we're serving them as much as we can at the Wellness Center, but we're also providing outside connections to other services, right? If they need more longer term supports or connections to other types of services. And what we're finding, no surprise, right, is that the waiting lists are really high across so many different agencies because there's such an escalated need right now across our city for mental health. And just the impact of that sort of across the system, I think is really profound. And I think really so important that we have spaces like today, right, to sort of really talk about this, to say, not just for our students, but I think really very humbly for everyone, for ourselves, for all of us, really thinking just, taking that opportunity to understand how much the pandemic has really impacted everyone's mental health in so many different ways. So I think looking at this in a broader way and having these types of dialogues are really important.
Yeah, I talked to my wife about this stuff in front of the fire back home in Connecticut over coffee, and she explained to me that the like you said, the effects of the trauma that folks are currently experiencing are yet to manifest. I mean, she talked about during 9/11 walking around and trying to, knock on doors and check in with people to find out if they, if they could help with dealing with the trauma. But, the trauma hadn't set in yet, right? Right now, everybody is in whatever you want to call it, this kind of extended coping mode, right? And so, as you said, we may not have even started experiencing yet the effects of the trauma because it's, it takes time to manifest, right? After the dust settles in what we're going through here. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think people need time, and I think it's, one of the things I know that, I try to reiterate when I speak to my students is just like, it's okay to feel however it is that you're feeling. The goal is that we find healthy ways for you to process and do that, right? Like we try to pick up healthy coping skills or ways of managing what's going on, right? Because, there really is no definitive statement that says this is when it's exactly going to be over, right? Because when the pandemic hit, we thought it was just going to be 6 weeks and everybody's back to business. And we're talking about, almost 2 years later, okay, give it a couple months, all right? And we're still here, right? And so I think that a lot of that is, just, even for ourselves as clinicians, like, I'm big on whatever I say to you first, whatever I say to you, I say to me first, right? That's good practice, right? I cannot tell you got to find healthy ways to cope. And me as a clinician, I'm not coping healthy, right? And so I use that as an opportunity to talk with students and say, like, how are you managing? Like, what are some things that you did before the pandemic that you're not doing now that you wish you could do? And how can we find ways for you to do those things again, but in smaller increments or, in your current setting, right? Because that's the point. We want people to go, we don't want you to go back to how things were, but we want you to find new ways to evolve, in this process. And that takes time.
Right. Jennifer, you want to get in on that?
Yes, absolutely agreed. With what Saida was saying, and agreed. I think there's this really there's a real complexity when we talk about sort of, right, this idea of complex trauma, right? That there's so many different things kind of happening all at once, right? So for example, a person may have had, they may have lost someone before the pandemic, right? And then maybe seeing so many of the things that are happening during the pandemic are triggering some of those feelings of loss, right? And then you think of how that manifests in so many different ways, like people who may have also lost jobs, right? Or lost the home they're living in and have to relocate or live somewhere else. Or just a loss of sort of the normal way of life that we were all used to before, right? I think there's such a period of so much adjustment that everyone's going through, and really building off, what Saida was saying, right? That we're still in it. We're still in it, and we still are kind of navigating all of those changes all the time. And I think also it's important for all of us who are doing this work on so many levels, not just for us as, the clinicians in the Wellness Center, but I would say really broadly across everyone in CUNY who's doing this work sort of across CUNY, from the different programs to the different faculty to everyone who's kind of a part of this work. I think it's so important to look at not just how we're compassionately supporting our students, but really how we're supporting ourselves, right? Because I think that piece of vicarious trauma can also happen, right? When we're holding all of those different pieces in our work. So I think really taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're getting the support that we need is really important.
Yeah, it's funny because on the way here, I came into town to see my doctor. That's why I have to do the show. Out the 7 train, and was walking in the Court Square area. I ran into Joby Jacob, who's one of the faculty in natural science, and we're just talking on the sidewalk there in a kind of a precarious location, because the way the building is set up, it only gives about, I don't know, maybe not even 6 feet of clearance on the sidewalk. And a guy was walking his dogs with his girlfriend, and I start hearing this thing like, give us clear, you 6 feet distance, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. And I finally realized he wanted to get by. He wanted to be able to stay on the sidewalk, and I was in the way, I didn't know what was going on, but he was like bent out of shape. I was walking, and muttering. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever seen the movie Office Space, the guy with the stapler. My wife, usually when I'm bitter about stuff, she says, "Are you talking to your stapler?" I go, "Yeah." And anyhow, I just kept looking at the guy and going like, what is like going on? He's like a part of me wanted to like rush him, and like jump on him and like kiss him on the mouth. As I was like, so, kind of like, why this hostility? But I forgot, again, this is New York City. Just negotiating the streets is a traumatic experience on a good day without a pandemic. Now, on top of it, we got a pandemic. I don't know what that guy's been through. He may have lost people, right? And I'm just responding from my own, belligerent guy in the street thing. And, I had to get that word, use the word compassion. And I've always felt there's never been enough of that, right, in the world. But right now, there hasn't been a greater need for it, I think. But, again, this idea that you talked about little traumas. If I had gotten into it with this guy in the street, that's a, traumatic experience, right? And, everybody's being pushed to their limits in this experience. So I'm guessing you get a little bit of that. I mean, I was walking out of the C building last week on my way home, and some guy was on the phone, screaming about couldn't get in the building because he didn't have the right clearance. I don't know whether it was the cleared for, or whether his ID wasn't working, but he was on fire. And, I mean, I didn't call. Usually I would call like public safety and say, you've got somebody, who's losing it in front of the building. But I think they were aware of it, so I kind of let it go. But I mean, do you get some of that coming? I mean, I guess you're not on site. So when you're getting these people, you're not getting them in the middle of some sort of crisis, right? When you interact with them.
Well, we do have crisis. So we do have students that come to us in crisis. We really do. At any time of the day. I know that I've had maybe about, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 students this year alone who they're calling in a panic, like, you know, there's something like going on right now. They need our help. And sometimes it's not really that they need the wellness center. They just may need a connection or a bridge to another resource after school. But you hear wellness, right? So that's the thing. You hear wellness centers, you think like automatically that sets the alarm off in students' head, like these people can help me. And we love that. We want students to think, when you hear wellness, you want to hear feel better, feel like I can feel sane, sound, and grounded. And a lot of times we're able, you know, during our crisis hours, you know, be able to help students ground themselves, communicate what they really need in that moment, and then connect them, whether it's that they need therapeutic or counseling services from us, whether it's that they need to really talk to admissions or they need to, you know, come some kind of support, you know. And so, you know, one of the things that we're not absent of is people in crisis. Students are calling and they're in distress, you know. And so I think that we do a really good job of like bridging the gap and helping to just let them know, like, it's okay. Yeah, this sounds like a lot. And so let's take some deep breaths. Let's ground ourselves. And then how can I be of best support to you? And you'll be surprised how quickly people are like, they snap out of it and they're like, yeah, okay, what I really needed was this. And it's like, okay, that's great, you know, and let's help you get that, right? And so, like, that person you saw in front of the building, if they'd have called us, we probably would have been able to calm them down and say, do you have all your forms? Like, you know, we would have been able to have that grounding conversation, you know, kind of going back to what you were saying. I think that the pandemic has made people hyper vigilant. I think we're all like on the trains and buses. You don't want to sit certain place. You don't want to stand next to people, right? But now you're like, oh, I don't want you to stand next to me and I get COVID, right? And it's just like, it's probably not COVID. They have allergies or it's not those things. So I think the hyper vigilance is what people are really responding to. Jen?
I'm going to take a quick station break because we've been into the show about a half hour here. It's 1:40. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia World Radio, WLGR. And my guests today are from the LaGuardia Wellness Center, and they are pulling it up. Saida Gordon, LMSW, and Jennifer Mitchell-Mayer, LCSW, and they are from the Division of Student Affairs. And we're talking about the work they're doing with students in these difficult times. Did you want to tag something onto that, Jennifer, what we were talking about?
Sure, absolutely. I would add that we have the privilege of really being able to see our student, like, respond to crisis and respond to things really in real time. And I think that it's a piece that I really love about our work, because, right, if a person in crisis, right, you can't schedule your crisis for 3 weeks from now, right? When someone needs support in the moment, we're really able to do that. And I actually feel really grateful and appreciative that we are set up to really do that. And so I think we've been able to do that kind of in some really tangible ways. And I think all under, you know, the oversight of our incredible director, Frank Latera Bellino, who oversees, he's the director of the Wellness Center. I think has been really intentional in sort of, again, how do we expand our services and respond in real time? So as crises come up, as we've had a huge uptick in the amount of intakes and students who are reaching out, how do we really respond to that? So we've been able to have extended hours. So we're working later in the evenings, you know, been able to bring on some new staff such as ourselves and some other, you know, really great staff who've been able to support this work. We've also started offering Saturday hours. That's a new development that the Wellness Center has done, you know, again, in response to this need, right? Because there were so many students who were saying, you know, between school and work and family obligation, they needed other hours. So we were able to do that, to have people working on Saturday, to have extra hours. And, you know, I think it's a piece that I love that we're really uniquely able to do, that when a student needs support and they need crisis in that moment, we're not putting them on a wait list, right? We're really able to see them and respond to them in real time. And I think that's really incredibly powerful, to be able to be with someone and be with a student in a moment when they really need it.
So I'm guessing that since you're part-time, that your workload, is full up, right? You're basically handling as many cases as you can. There's no, I'm always interested in finding out, here's the CARES money, and it's to deal with extraordinary times, and is it enough? Are you basically busy from the minute those 17, whatever it is, 16, 17 hours? There's no wiggle room, right? Is that the case?
Yes, I would add that's definitely the case. We're really busy. We're seeing a lot of students, and I think I can really speak for most of my colleagues for this, but I would say certainly for myself, I mean, we like it that way, right? Like we're very busy, but we're glad to be busy, right? Because we are so glad that the students, they know that we're here and we're able to serve them. So the amount of, like I said, just the increased need that we're seeing, again, we're so glad that we can be really responsive to that. So, and also, I think just to add to the question from before, we are actually we're kind of rotating through, we are on the campus. So we do have a presence in the C building. So we're physically are there, although our services are still done through telehealth electronically. But yes, so definitely very busy, but glad to be responding to the increasing and emerging needs.
Ida, you busy?
I'm pretty busy. This work is hard to quantify. I think it's, what to me is always quality over quantity. It takes a lot of time to sit down and build relationships with students who are experiencing a myriad of just, I don't want to say issues, but challenges, right? Challenges that they're trying to work through, right? And that takes a lot of, mental energy, emotional, awareness, and to be able to be present, day in and day out. So we're very busy. But like Jen said, it's a good busy. Some days are more busier than others, but there's never a dull moment here, right? And not that we live for someone to have a problem, right? I don't think that's the goal. If everybody is okay, then that's fine. But we know that people always need an opportunity and a space to be able to kind of talk about even the smallest things, because one thing I've come to realize is a small issue is really a symptom of something bigger that we haven't delved into yet, right? And so we're nitpicking at that point. So we need to say, well, what's the real problem here? And that's when everybody starts telling you everything. You're like, oh, here we go. That's what it was. It wasn't that your sister left the milk out. It's that y'all don't get along. So let's talk about that relationship, right? And so, and with that respect, we stay busy once we get to the core. So yeah, it's busy.
So here's a time question for you. You're both part-time. You're both here by virtue of the CARES money. Have you been given any kind of end date as far as how long they've promised you work through at the college or through the college, or you're just kind of working with the expectation you'll keep working till the money runs out, and then what? So have you been told the terms of your employment, how long we can keep you? Is that a frank question?
Hugo, you're asking you're asking all the big questions today.
Yeah,
that's the most valid question. I would say details about all of that. We probably, that's probably more than we'd have time for on on this show today. But I think what's clear, again, we love the work that we do. I genuinely I'm so just happy and grateful that we get to do this incredible work. The students that we work with are amazing, and I just to be honest, like that's the thing that kind of trumps all of it for me, to be really honest with you. I am blown away every day at just the resilience and the determination and the strength that our students come in with every day. Like, and I think we spoke so much about all these challenges and traumas and really difficult things that people are going through. And I think which makes it all the more powerful of just that they're continuing to go through it, and they're students and they're managing all these pieces. And again, with grit and determination and resiliency and senses of humor and like all their great qualities, like the CUNY students are honestly some of the most incredible students I think ever that I feel genuinely privileged to be able to work with them every day. I feel so grateful to be able to work with my amazing colleagues, with Saida today, and with all the different colleagues that are at the Wellness Center. It's really, really incredible work. And so I think right, I mean, that's always the question of this work, right? The details, how are, the funding, how is all of that going to work out? And certainly those are important questions to be had. But I think for me, what kind of comes up the most is the why we do this work, and just the passion of, at the end of the day, we are here to serve the incredible students that are in front of us, and it's truly just a privilege to do that. And so I think holding that in the center is the thing that keeps me going every day.
Aida, any thoughts on any of this?
With grants and stuff, everything has a timeline to it, right? And so, like, while there is nothing definitive, I work, like, I'll be here till they say it's over. So I try not to, I focus more on the present, because if I think about, well, what's going to happen 6 months from now, then that's a lot of energy I'm putting on something that hasn't occurred yet. And one of the things that I have a lot of hope for, and I think this is just the social worker in me and the optimist, is that, when something is really good and it's meaningful and it's powerful, and there are people who have good intentions behind it, where there's a will, there will always be a way and access. And what the conversation really needs to be about is, how do we make something like this not just a momentary budget, but something that is ingrained in the CUNY system for good? Like, it becomes something that's, a staple, because as we talked about, COVID is not going away. The pandemic, there's still so much, not much like 9/11, there's still so much going on 20 years later. So, COVID just happened last year. So we think in 10, 20 years out, there has to be something that's implemented that's long term. And so I only hope that the work that myself and Jen and everybody at the Wellness Center and everybody that's there, that the work that we're doing becomes so powerful that that those are the conversations have, like, we have to make this permanent. We cannot make this momentary. And so when I go to work and I come in and I counsel my students and I talk with my colleagues, that's where my head is usually at. And so I try to put good juju out there.
Good, because you'll balance me out. Because I'll tell you, when I was doing research on mental health services CUNY-wide, but I was talking to Frank and, at LaGuardia, and, one of the things I walked away from is that before the pandemic, mental health services for students was underfunded, or not, let's say that the money wasn't there for the need. Now, during the pandemic, obviously there are more monies, but the need is greater. And that historically, you're a young woman. I'm a 60-year-old man. Historically, what happens is, after these periods, the funding tends to go too, and it's too bad, because our students need it more so. I mean, when I was at an Ivy League school for graduate school, I can't remember. I think I got 6 sessions a year for mental health services. I know grad school is like a self-induced psychosis, but it got me through. Let's put it that way. And I know we have the same available services here. I think most of the time, 2 things happen. 1, students are unaware of them. And number 2, faculty, as much as we would hope we could be sensitive to our students' needs, typically we don't find out about it until that student is in trouble, either academically, behaviorally, or maybe even emotionally in class. So, I mean, by the way, I've shared that information. I shared it with the city council, and I've shared it with the university's the Board of Trustees Committee on Student Affairs. What I've yet to see anything come of it. But, I'm perfect to keep. If I had something to work on between now and when they make me leave the building, because I'm too old and they'll have to like staple me up to a podium so in order to do my lecture, it would, this would be something worth fighting for, which is mental health services for our students. Because as I've said on previous shows, I can't remember who I had on, I think when we talked about the CARES Act, New Yorkers by nature, we already have PTSD because most of us survived 9/11 or we live in the shadow of it, right? Now we're going to have PTSD from COVID. And we know that our students are some of the most, come from the most in the city. So they're getting it. On top of it, they already have that from their own socioeconomic backgrounds, things happening in the home, things happening in their communities. So, if I was going to pick a fight, this would be a good one, to go down with. But I don't have a lot of hope. By the way, I'm checking. I'm looking on this screen over here to just see if there's any questions coming up in the chat, because we're moving into the last quarter hour of the show, and which usually we save for questions either from the audience or we talk about the future. So let's talk about, what do you see? Because next semester, I don't know if anybody's told you, but we're shooting for 70% face-to-face classes, 30% online. Just watching what's happened right now, where we're in the reverse world, 30% face-to-face, 70% online, and all the achita that's created. I'm expecting, chaos of some sort or another. So what's the future look like for the work you're going to be doing in moving through what's left of the holidays, which I know is an anxiety-prone time, but also moving into this possible face-to-face experience?
So I think there's a couple pieces. I think first and foremost, related to what you were saying before, Hugo, around just the need for mental health, there's no question that the needs are going to remain very, very, very high. We're seeing that now. We're going to be seeing that for a long time to come. So I think that's kind of, first of all, I would say that's the underpinning is looking at how we can continue to be responsive to the continuing escalation of mental health needs. Right, the details of that, that's a lot of that is being discussed and explored right now. I know, for me, actually before I came to CUNY, a lot of my background was doing policy and grant writing. I've written and done a lot of state grants, city grants, foundations, federal grants. I really I really understand and appreciate that piece of it, that funding, goes in a lot of different directions. But I think at the end of the day, I think just holding that the importance of making sure that we're here and we're responsive to the mental health needs in real time, and knowing that, I think, agreeing with what you said, that they are definitely going to be continuing to grow. We're going to be dealing with the impacts of COVID for years and years to come. So I think holding that is really important. And I think going into kind of the immediate for what you were saying, I think since we're going toward 70% in person for the next semester, a lot of our work will also be supporting students in that transition period as they're kind of coming back to campus, right? Because again, I think so many things come up. There's a lot of social anxiety. There's a lot of concern and reasonable concern, right, about what it means to be back on campus. We have a lot of students who, it's maybe their second year, they're working closer toward graduation, and they've never even been able to have the opportunity to be on campus and to know what the classrooms and the campus look like. And I think it's really powerful and just an important transition when we think about what it means to kind of come back to campus. And again, those anxieties and concerns that come with it. So I think definitely the Wellness Center will continue to play an important role in sort of supporting students with making kind of that really big transition to kind of coming back and what that looks like. And I think if anything, our staff is, we're so flexible and adaptable. So I think continuing to look at how we can best use ourselves and as we're supporting students come back, I think that's going to be really important. We actually did something recently with the wonderful Vice President Butler. She had a terrific initiative to have people kind of come downstairs and even just greeting students as they came in, which I thought was really great, as they were kind of coming in and asking questions like, where do they go and how do they find different places. So some of us were able to do that recently, of just spending a couple hours in the morning just greeting students as they kind of came in and help direct them, right? So I think those kind of things are really important too, like really looking at how we're welcoming and supporting students as they make this really big transition.
You were saying Vice President Butler. Are you talking about Dr. Faye Butler? Or are you okay, very good. Who's now
correct?
In charge of student affairs. At one part of student affairs, should I say? Saida, you want to chime in on any of that?
No, Jen always says it beautifully. So yeah, Jen is amazing. I mean, everybody here is really great. I just, one of the things I feel like, although we came in because of the CARES Act, is you become grateful to meet people who really have the same vision about what this work is supposed to look like and how to do it, and do it not just well, but do it in a way that's intentional, and it really connects with the heart of the people that we're working with, right? Not just each other, but also the student body. Like just being in school in general is its own, you talked about grad school having, has its own form of psychosis, but I think school in general, and the way the educational system set up, is its own form of psychosis, right? It's this constant thought in your head, like, the whole point of school that you want to achieve better and you want to do better, right? But then there's always that little voice in your head that tells you may not be good enough, right? And so, when students come to us, our also goal is to remind them, no, you're more than good enough. You're here for a reason. So let's figure out how we can help you navigate that so that you can get to your intended goal. And so when I hear us talk about all these different things, it kind of reminds me, like, there's so much of a greater purpose that we all have. It's just us just finding, where in that purpose is our footing. And so we hope that when we work with the students, we help them find their place and their footing so that they continue on a journey. We're just a small piece of their journey. We're just here to kind of cheerlead them and guide them and give them some hope and direction. And the rest is up to them. So my hope is that we're always doing a good job in that moment, that small second of a moment that we have with them.
Yeah, I would expect that you probably get a spike in the need for services somewhere around the time freshmen take their first midterms. Because the data shows that's usually when in fact, my daughter, who went off to the school of her choice after much searching, sure enough, after the first set of midterms, I got a call, and she's telling me how, I don't think I'm, Dad, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe I should come back. And thankfully, my ex-wife, who had paid for the majority of her schooling, said, like, look, I paid for a year. You're going to go through a year, and we'll talk about it in May. And that's all it took. She got, she stuck it out, and she made it. But yeah, there are a lot of points, and in fact, I've said it at different workshops. I am typically the traumatic experience in my students' lives. The workload that I put on in some of my writing intensives, or just in my classes in general. And they should only be so lucky as the fact that I'm the only traumatic thing in their life. I'm sure I'm not, but I certainly add to it. So we're actually running out of time. We got maybe about 5 minutes. Any last things you want to share with the community, or last things you want, or anybody else you want to thank, anything like that? Either one of you? Saida, why don't you go first, since Jen always says everything.
She says she's just wonderful. Leave Jen alone, okay? She's wonderful. So just a reminder to the students, please come. The Wellness Center, we are open, okay? Our schedule, we will be here during the holidays trying to, provide counseling services. Our doors are open. Right now, our schedule is we're here Monday through Thursday from 9 to 7. And then on Fridays, we're open from 9 to 5. And then Saturdays, we have 10 to 2 sessions. And so students, if you need help, if you need us to kind of give you some direction, or if you just need some support, please do not hesitate to contact us so that we can, help you. We are here. Our schedule is change for fall 2. But as soon as that's posted, we'll let students know. So please do not be shy. We're still offering virtual services. And I think there's a gradual push there has been some in-persons, but we're still virtual, but we're here. And so that's the one thing I definitely wanted to put out there. Jen?
Yeah, absolutely agreed with all of that. Students, please come reach us. We're here for any faculty that may be listening. If you want to ever refer a student, or just to learn more, sort of who we are and what we're doing, definitely reach out to us. I would say through one of our new colleagues, Catherine, who's leading such a social media revolution for our work. We have a presence sort of across a lot of different social media platforms. So that's also a great way to kind of know what's happening and different workshops and events. So there's a lot of ways to kind of stay connected. We're putting out a monthly newsletter that kind of gives out updates of things that are happening. But I just want to express, again, so much gratitude for our students, for just being amazing and letting us be able to offer this work. First and foremost, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the students. So I want to thank them first of all. All of our amazing colleagues. Saida is just incredible. All of our counselors that we work with are so fantastic. Our director, Frank, our assistant director, Regina. All of our colleagues really just visionaries and so passionate about doing this work. And so we're grateful to be able to work with them. So grateful for the president, Kenneth Adams, who's just such an incredible visionary and such a strong supporter of this work. So we're really thankful to him, and just thankful to you, Hugo, for inviting us and just giving us the space to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
You got it. We should thank to Frank, who brought you all here, even though people were dropping like flies. Dr. Kim got sick today, and some other folks who could have been here that had other issues. But so I can just say thank you for the work you're doing for our students, and because I know that, like I said, the help is needed, and I would hope that you are, we've seen what has happened in the crisis to what we call the frontline workers of the physical needs of the pandemic, right? As we're losing folks from, the health industries because of what they've been going through, with their workload. I would also hope that the two of you, take care of yourselves as well. Watch out for Zoom fatigue, and watch out for, all the other types of fatigue. Take a break, as they, as they tell you on the airplane, when the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first, then you can help your whoever it is next to you. So the show has been What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR, and my guests today have been Gordon, LMSW, and Jennifer Mitchell Mayer, LCSW, of the Division of Student Affairs Wellness Center. We've been talking about the work they're doing in these difficult times with and for our students. And I want to dedicate today's show to that guy out there walking his dog. I hope it got better for you. And we'll end the show as we came in. I just want to thank my another frontline worker, my engineer, Chris Pope, who puts up with me week to week, engineer extraordinaire. So take us out, Mr. Pope. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.